Jay, super pumped to have you back on, man. I think we were just talking about before the podcast. Your podcast was the very first podcast I ever did, and man, that had to been like 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago or something like that.
It's
So
been a breeze, but it was always great having you on. And then you actually guest hosted my podcast there for 6 months or so, and still have people asking about it.
no, that's awesome, man. I always enjoyed all the help over the years you gave me, dude. But it's nice to have you back on. In a sense, like I have to have you back on every 6 months or so just to catch up on life and everything else. But I do. So a couple things I want to cover in this one. One, you've got a really cool field judging, or well, we would just call it judging app, and it's HornScore, correct?
Uh huh.
Yeah, and so at the end, at the second half of the podcast, we'll talk about that. I do want to preface it though for my audience that because I know a lot of them are not obsessed with like field judging animals or always hunting trophy class animals or whatever. I think there's a lot more in that app than those folks think there is in terms of value. So I encourage people, even if you're not really interested in score and that sort of thing, check out the end of the podcast just because, just I mean, even if you're not interested at all, and then 5 years from now you draw a trophy elk tag or whatever, at least a tool like that will allow you to kind of know like what you should be looking for in that unit. So I'll leave it at that because we'll dive into the weeds on it. But I just wanted to mention that off the start, just so people know. And then other than that, Jay, like I want to pick your brain on elk hunting, and
Okay.
we'll go from there. Sound good?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Cool. So having said that, I'm gonna start out with literally right before we got on here in my membership group. I literally threw out, I'm like, hey, I'm getting on a podcast right now with Jay Scott. Anybody that has any questions, reply right now. Sorry about the late notice. So I literally got 8 comments in the last like 10 minutes with questions.
Awesome.
So let's do some of those. And some of them are elk hunting related. Some of them I think are more just related to your background. But we can dive in there. So Sam Ramirez, this is one that is related to your outfitting in Mexico. He said, "What are the logistics to hunting Mexico that would be something I would like to do in the future? Just like ballpark cost, species, that sort of thing." Jay, do you mind giving us kind of an overview on that part of your world?
You bet. So this will be my 29th season doing hunts down in Mexico. And looking at myself on the screen there, my age shows that.
I don't think so, dude. You're still on the carnivore diet, right?
It'll be 3 years in December. I was inspired by Cliff 2.5 years ago, and
That's why you're looking so good, dude.
I'm pretty lean and mean for sure. I'm 52 years old, and I think I'm in better shape now than I've probably been in, a lot of years of my life. I've always been thin, but thanks for helping me get on that, Cliff. Mexico, we operate in Sonora and Chihuahua, Mexico, both. We do Gould's turkey hunts in the spring, and then in the fall, we do Coues deer, mule deer, and desert bighorn sheep. So anyone that's looking to hunt in Mexico, I highly encourage it. Mexico is an incredible country. Had so many great memories over the years. But to answer the question more specifically, like we offer, there's a lot of different outfitters out there, but for the deer species, we offer a do-it-yourself hunt and a fully guided hunt for the Coues deer, and then the mule deer we just do fully guided hunts, and then for the desert bighorn sheep, it's fully guided, and the Gould's turkey is fully guided as well. The biggest question I get in regards to Mexico is safety, and it's something that is always at the forefront of our mind, whether it be me or my director of operations, Phil Kramer, all of our guides. Obviously, we want to conduct good, safe trips. And I'm not going to deny at all that there's things that go on in Mexico that would make some people cringe. Fortunately, we have not seen any of that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to deny that there's things that go on there that would probably scare people. But I think in our own country we have our own things that are scary as well. So first and foremost, like the fear factor, it's just, I have so many people that come down and they say, Jay, it's nothing like what I expected. I never felt unsafe, so there are standard safety protocols that we do follow, but I always like to start the Mexico conversation out with, be smart, be safe, keep your, travel during the day, travel in a group if you can, have all your necessary permits. And as far as a cost structure, so the do-it-yourself hunts, they're anywhere from, speaking in a range of outfitters, not just my group, but anywhere in that 3,000 to 5,000 range for do-it-yourself Coues deer hunts. And then the guided is going to be somewhere probably in that 6,000 to 8,500 range for guided coups. Now, on our guided coups, we do 7 full days of hunting with a travel day on each side. So it's kind of a 9 day program. A lot of other outfitters do the 5 day hunts where they have a travel day on each side. We started doing the 7 full day hunts just because we felt like we needed that extra time for guys to really get trophy deer. And so that's why we do that. And then on the do-it-yourself hunts, those are really, you can pick your time frame. And I know other guys that do-it-yourself hunts as well. But I would say most groups go in that 5 to 8 day, maybe 5 to 10 day range on the do-it-yourself hunts. And then the mule deer, Sonora specifically has some incredible mule deer hunting over the years, and it's a lot of it is drought related, or on good wet years there's really good
Sure.
deer, but then when there's dry years it can be tougher. Just kind of a disclaimer, a little bit what's going on with the Mexico mule deer is you've got a lot of high fence mule deer hunting, you've got a lot of bait and switch or trap and play where they trap deer, release deer, pin raise deer, and I'm just really not into that. So the small amount of mule deer hunts we do are on, everything's on private property, but they're fully free range deer. We do feed them protein throughout the year, and we do drinkers for them. But you kind of got to watch in Mexico there what I would call kind of shenanigans going on with a lot of this trap deer and pen raised deer, and even pen raised deer released 2 days prior to the clients getting there and then shooting it and saying it's a free range animal. So not to dive in the weeds too much, but it's a little bit of a buyer beware system out there.
Sure.
And just keep that in mind if you're doing sheep hunts or doing mule deer hunts, that there is a chance that there could be some sort of fake environment, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Just and it's those kind of things. Is almost like just knowing. That's all.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
just
the main
kind of
thing.
keep,
Is so you can kind of just be wary of it, you know.
yeah.
And yeah, so it is. It's an interesting dynamic in that sense. One thing on the Coues deer, Jay. So not a great hunt typically to try to do in a short period of time. Like a 5 to 8 day hunt's really what you should be shooting for.
Yeah, I mean, a 5 to 7 day is good, but the Coues deer hunting in the mountains is an awesome hunt, and it's a real spot and stock oriented hunt, a real glassing, intensive hunt, and um, to find good mature deer, a lot of times you need to be able to glass over country a lot and kind of take your time trying to find a big old mature buck. And so I would encourage anyone, because the travel, is,
Sure.
you spend a full day travel, and depending on where you come from, it might be a full day traveling from where you come from and then a full day traveling in Mexico. You don't want to go down there for a 3 or 4 day hunt. You want to plan for 5 to 7 days for sure. We like the 7 days. We feel like it gives ample time to really look the country over and kind of discriminate a little bit and try and find those older, mature, bigger deer. So that would be a recommendation that I would have.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Oh, this is a funny one. All right, guys, in some of my content, you're gonna see that I've been using this chest holster from Invader Concepts. This is with my 10 millimeter. I also use it with my Glock 19 and even a PMR 30. I'm gonna do a bunch of content here in the next couple months on that around bear defense. It should be interesting. It looks a little awkward to have your gun under your bino harness, but if you test out all the different variations, it is the best and you have it on you all the time. I do have a discount code. It's CliffG and it's for 10% off. Go check them out. So this is from Jesse, and he's in my group, and he's a very big bear hunter, and he's from Arizona. Jay, he's actually lives not too far from where you stationed out of there. Great guy. I've guided him on a bunch of hunts, and he's a very active guy within the group. And he's asking on bears. Any bear hunting in Mexico?
So bears are actually illegal to hunt in Mexico.
Okay.
It's kind of one of their, it would be kind of like the bald eagle would be here to the US. A bear is a
Oh,
very
okay.
symbolic animal in Mexico. With that being said, some of our ranches in Chihuahua and Sonora have seen just some giant, just some hellacious bears. So
So they are
they're,
there.
oh yeah, there's a lot of bears, and they tend to wreak havoc on spring boxes and yeah, I mean they're definitely in some of those mountain ranches, and certainly on our Gould's turkey ranches. Bears are more common in that kind of pine, pinyon pine, and ponderosa type pine country. The bears are prevalent, but as far as harvesting them, you can't harvest a bear in Mexico legally.
I gotcha. Gotcha. Good stuff. The last one I'll give you from the group to kind of change angles, and I've talked to it's from a guy named Scott, and he's asked me more about like the higher end elk hunting market, Jay, and so not necessarily only like pay to play stuff, and we're talking about in the U.S. now, but you've killed a couple 400-inch bulls, huh, in your life. So you've done
Mm-hmm.
it personally. I know you've been a part of several others, and you've hunted big elk a lot. And do you have any overall advice? This could be draw strategy stuff. If a guy's willing to pay for hunts, any general advice on how to access those type of hunts in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, you take elk and mule deer and the pricing structure for those quality hunts for those two animals. I mean, it used to be that, sheep were the most expensive thing, but, mule deer and elk specifically, the price has, it's supply and demand.
Right.
And um, across the West, as states liberalize the amount of tag allotments, so in other words, when I say liberalize, like raise the tag allotments and lower the age class. What that does is it creates a need or a high demand for those older age class bulls. And so across the West, my home state of Arizona, I was a public land elk guide there for 20 years, 20 seasons, and I guided pretty much in the three best units of the state, Unit 9, Unit 10, and Unit 23, and a little bit in Unit 1. But what I saw in Arizona was the quality of our bulls over 20 years kind of started declining. The reason for that is it's just pretty much there's a bunch of reasons, but giving out too many tags brings the age class over time of those animals down. The reason I bring that up is a lot of states across the West, the state agencies kind of over time have been doing the same thing. So while there's still some great elk out there to be had and some great elk hunting, a lot of it is being shifted more towards private land, reservations, and that type of stuff. The public land, Arizona still has some really good bulls. Utah, New Mexico, there's still, don't get me wrong, there's still some good bulls out there to be had. And if you're talking about draw, like you need to be applying in Arizona, you need to be applying in New Mexico. New Mexico is interesting in that it doesn't have a bonus point system. So it's just a random, kind of luck of the draw, if you will. But then, a lot of the other states like Utah, Nevada, Colorado, Montana, not sure about Idaho as much, but there's some good bulls. But anymore, those tags are very hard to come by. So what that has created, it's created these private land, these properties, these private land properties, and it's created reservations, and the price has just skyrocketed.
Right.
So when you're looking for, let's say those 350-inch bulls or larger, some of the 400-inch bulls or larger, you could be talking on the low end 25,000 for a tag up to 100, over 100,000 for a tag.
Yeah.
You've got um, it. I think you want a little more general answer or even a more specific answer. The reality is quality elk hunting has gotten as tough as getting really good sheep tags,
Right.
and because they bugle, because they're so interactive, even the archery tags could be 40, 50, 60 grand. um,
But it's just, and like you say, it's just a supply and demand thing. And I think the other thing that, and it's almost like it can be an awkward conversation to have, I think, Jay, because people like scoff at those numbers. But there's also the element that I think is worth noting that in the like the private ranches that can do this kind of management over the last 10 years, they've gone from being a $10 million ranch to a $90 million ranch. So,
yes,
when you pay, yeah, it's an insane amount of money. It's way above my pay grade to pay 50 grand to go elk hunting. But a lot of these guys are paying 50 grand to go elk hunting on a place that's a $100 million ranch. So like you can do the math. That just
it
is
just
what
kind
it
of
is.
keeps stair stepping up.
Yeah.
It's like you can buy $1 million ranch and sell $100,000 elk tags. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. Yeah.
Everything is kind of stair stepped up. So in 2017, I got the opportunity to kind of be the hunt manager at the Ot Six Ranch, which you came over, I don't know,
Yeah.
midway
It's a
through that. I
beautiful
was there
place.
for 5 years and was at the Ot Six Ranch. And the Ot Six is not a place where they pay for elk tags. It's just the owner and his friends and whatnot. And now I'm on another property. So 21 was my last year there, and now I'm up in Montana. um, and both ranches, none of them sell tags to the public, but there are in those states like Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, Montana. There are areas that you can find private land tags and either buy from an outfitter or buy from the private land owner and go elk hunting. Colorado has some amazing private land hunting. New Mexico has some amazing private land hunting. If you want to hunt private land in Arizona, you pretty much have to go the Indian reservation route. And there's some great reservations across Arizona, New Mexico, um, Montana, Colorado. Like there are great opportunities out there. Just unfortunately, the price has just gotten insane. I mean, even I hunted the San Carlos Indian Reservation in '04, '05, and '06, and I think I paid $30,000 for the tag, and then you had to hire an Indian guide, and um, but now those tags are way more than that.
Right.
And Utah has an interesting program where you can buy conservation permits that are unit wide. So rather than like be on a private ranch, they will actually sell. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but they'll like sell an archery tag or two during the archery season, so you can hunt anywhere on public ground, anywhere in that unit. Um, and then they'll do like a muzzleloader tag. Then they'll do they call them like early rifle tags, and you can bid on those at the Western Hunt Expo and or a lot of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Sportsmen for Wildlife, a lot of the different organizations in Utah. You might have a San Juan, a beaver, a Fillmore Pavant, you know, a Boulder, all these different units, and one archery tag might sell for 15 to 17,000, where a beaver tag might sell for 50,000, and it's
Right.
all through auction. So if you watch those auctions, sometimes maybe you can get a little bit of a bargain, but there's really no secrets out there, other than unfortunately to get really good quality, great bugling, great antlers, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah,
The
it's
other
just the
option,
market.
obviously, is to put in for the state draws, New Mexico, like I said, Arizona, Nevada. You can draw a tag, but a lot of times, sometimes it takes, 15, 20, 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, forever.
Right.
Um, so, a young guy that's 25 might not draw till he's, 55 years old, 30 years later. So that's the challenge right now with elk hunting. But if you're willing to pay, there are some great hunts out there.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And on the this the Scott who asked this question, I specifically talked to him a little bit about Utah on some of the tags you could buy, and it seems, and I don't know the weeds of it, Jay, but it seems like some of these tags also kind of come they can also like they end up on the open market too. I noticed that, and we can get into the details of that. But do you have any like if people are into that market? Are there any big like gotchas that guys should watch out for, Jay, or do you have like some
I
general
mean,
advice?
just thinking off the top of my head, I would want to make sure that, where is the area? What are the unit boundaries specified for? The person you're buying the tag from, do they have the tag in hand? You know, Coming from a real estate background, I would want to have a contract that would spell out, I, Jay Scott, am going to hunt on your property, or I'm going to buy this tag from you. And then, maybe list the expectations as far as like, I'm going to have a valid tag. I'm going to have, a season and it starts from this date to this date. In anything that I do, I kind of like to have it in on a contractual basis or in a contract that kind of
Right.
spells out how much I'm paying, what my expectations are, not like as far as trophy size, but am I going to have a valid tag? When am I going to get that tag in my hand?
Yeah,
Um,
the
you know,
access
is it going to give me
specifically defined.
access?
Yeah,
Am I going to have unlimited access? And no locked gates on the property. I mean, there's kind of a bunch of things that I would want to brainstorm about and make sure that that opportunity that I'm looking at is exactly what I'm thinking. And that goes with anything. If you're getting a duck hunting lease or
for sure.
trespass, trespass, you're paying a trespass fee somewhere. I So many things get misunderstood, and you say, well, you told me that. Well, put it in writing, have the
Yeah,
person sign it, and at least then you have some sort of kind of written document that you can use as a guideline, um, for your expectations for, if you're paying a sizable amount of money, I would put it in writing and try and get a meeting of the minds and an understanding.
yeah, yeah. Just getting the understanding, I think, is huge. It just avoids conflict down the road. It's that one thing I tell guys that are in like this world, and I think the duck hunting analogy is very similar in this way. Um, for better or worse, if this is the world that you want to elk hunt in, a lot of guys are doing these hunts annually, and they already have their foot in the door because they've been hunting the places every year. So if you find a good one and it's a reasonable value and you're having fun there, one of my pieces of advice is like try to make sure that the landowner's happy with you and that they're the first guy like the next year, and you kind of just like have the deal set. And even from a value perspective, I know guys that I'm sure they're still spending a lot of money. They may be paying 25, 30 grand for an elk hunt, which I know sounds crazy, but that if that tag was in the open market, it'd probably sell for 50. And the only
Yeah,
reason they're getting it for 30 is because they keep that they kind of have a routine with the landowner or whoever's handling the tags.
yeah, and I know a lot of guys that do that, and they may have a spot in New Mexico, a spot in, Colorado, a spot in Montana, a spot in Wyoming or whatnot, and they might rotate with a couple hunting partners. But in essence, what you're saying is when you find something good, hold on to it. So you may have an agreement that says, every year we're going to come back. It might not be me, but it might be one of my hunting partners. Maybe that's a good strategy to have so that, say you draw a tag and now you're spoken for this great place. How do you split time? Maybe you send your hunting partner, and I know a lot of guys do that on some of the reservation hunts where they'll book a spot on several places. They may hunt this place one year and send their buddy or their son or their cousin or whatever, their nephew, and then and they might have that going on 3 or 4 different properties or 3 or 4 different, pay to play type places. And I think that's good advice as well. It's 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 one of those things that it's very unfortunate that it's come to that, but it's a reality. So
Yeah,
the quicker that you can face the reality that, the price is probably never going down, and if you have the resources, then you just got to get in the game. And what's crazy though is there's still places that are super expensive that are maybe not as good as others, and there are some bargains out there. And you may say, well, it's a $25,000 hunt, and I may be like, well, that's a bargain because you're going to pay
sure.
25 to hunt that place and shoot, have a chance at 30-inch, 40-inch bigger bulls than the other places. So, kind of keep your eye out. Go, talk to other hunters that have hunted there, that have bought tags there. Try and get references on, what they're seeing. How well do they bugle? You know, how many bulls a day are they seeing? How callable are they? And all of those types of things, because not every elk hunt is created equal, as you know.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And even places that are known for places that are like all the places that are known for giant bulls are also not created equal. Like some of them are
That's
tough.
right.
Like some of them are high density elk places. Some of the reses and stuff. Like guys will tell you they're hunting 400-inch bulls, but they may only see one elk a day. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like there's a different experience too that I think people that want to get into that world they should do. And I think a lot of this, honestly, Jay, like to take the price structure out of it, it really applies to any like pay to play stuff. You could be trying to find just average mule deer places in Colorado. It's still the same structure. Once you get a good deal, you got to lock it down. You got to keep the relationship going. I always tell people, for better or worse, some of the best guys that play in this world and are consistently successful, they're good networkers. That's just what it is.
They're
You
good
know.
networkers too. And I think you have to understand that price, you may lock in your place, but you have to understand that the supply and demand, that what you paid 3 years ago, don't get bent out of shape when that landowner or whoever's offering that tag is wants more money for it. So you have to be able to
Right.
adapt and kind of look at it like a businessman would look at it, and know that it's supply and demand, and it's a revolving market. And when the economy's good and everybody's making money, those prices might skyrocket, and
Right.
you know you have to be able to adapt with that. And like you said, networking, and it's all about relationships as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'd love to hear if you have a different opinion, Jay. But what I have noticed is that landowners and people who control these tags, if you're maintaining a good relationship with them, they may increase prices, but almost always they're they're trying to be reasonable. You're like they're
Right.
all that usually if you've been hunting a place, like you still are get, even though it's brutal that it's an additional $3,000 or $10,000. Usually they're trying to, like, they're still giving you a deal. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That's at least my what I've noticed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you may get to a point where it's the cost is escalating, and you decide that you want to go
Sure.
somewhere different. Um, and another thing too is like, is it guided, or is it just you're turned loose in a private property and you can go anywhere you want? Because you could be on the best property in the world or the best piece of ground in the world, and you have the wrong guide that isn't compatible with your hunting style or your personality, and it just be a complete train wreck. So part of that contract and trying to get it in writing would be, what I would do is try and get an understanding of who are you going to be going out with in the field. Does it include meals? What type of meals? Is it breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or is it just dinner? And not leave anything out there to chance, and just put it all in writing so that everybody's kind of on the same page. I've treated my real estate business for years with the same thing. I used to write all my own addendums, and just literally just write it out in layman's terms, items 1 through 39 or whatever, and just spell it out so everyone is kind of on the same page. And that usually creates a situation where you don't have as many misunderstandings. So the better you
Yeah.
can communicate, the better you can spell it out, the less chance you're going to have any problems.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great piece of advice, Jay. And I don't mean to like this may upset some people, but my experience is particularly in the hunting world. If guys are unwilling to do that within reason, they tend to be problematic guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like in general. If a guy's like, "Oh, I don't do that. I don't do contracts. I don't do whatever," it's like, yeah, you don't do it because it tends to benefit you.
Like in the Jerry Maguire, he says, "My handshake's stronger than oak," or whatever he said. And,
Yeah,
then yeah, I mean, it's this day and age, especially with the money we're talking, um, you know, get as much of anything. I think that's good life advice.
sure.
It's great to be a man of your word, and we all want to be like that, and we all want to honor what we say. But the reality is, the more business you do out there in the world, and the more people you deal with in interactions, you realize that what we were taught as kids sometimes doesn't come true out there in the real world.
Yeah. No, for sure. And also just like having it written down, even if it's not like everyone wants to think it's like litigious type of thing. It's more just
No,
like, look, we've both decided like this is what we've agreed to, and all of a sudden there's less problems. You know what I mean?
exactly,
So I think that's
exactly.
great piece of advice, man. Um, Good deal. So that covers the questions from the group. Let's cover a couple more elk things that I. Some of these are things that like I've always wanted to ask you, and I don't think I've just never asked you, man. You've hunted elk all over the place, Jay, and in a lot of areas and topography that are a lot different than what I've hunted. Do you have any? Do you have any like overarching thoughts for elk hunters that you've seen over the years, like just like low hanging fruit, things that if they just heard it or they just were diligent about it, they would up their success and maybe their success plus enjoyment of elk hunting. Do you have any big thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been very, very fortunate for a long time, 20 years as a public land elk guide, and now close to 10 years as getting to be on some of the best private properties in the world, and I've hunted some of the best reservations in the world. And I think one of the biggest mistakes elk hunters make is they love the calling, they love the bugling, and they really want to mix it up and stir it up with the elk, and so they call a ton. And a
Yeah,
lot of people are really not good callers. Their tonal quality is off, their timing is off, and they just actually get in the way of them wanting to have that interaction. They get in the way of having a great elk hunt, especially if you're trying to kill old, mature, big, giant bulls. Some of the best things you can do is not make a single peep, let them bugle, and then systematically try and make your approach, make your stalk, and then obviously have the wind in your favor. But variables if you have plenty of time to hunt and you're hunting one specific bull and those variables are not stacked in your favor, you back out.
right.
So many people get so aggressive and they end up blowing that bull, and then it takes them 5 or 6 days or a week or longer to find that bull again because they blew them across the country. If you can make efficient stalks, one of the great things with being in the best units in Arizona for 20 years, but then being able to be around these animals on these private properties, is really had a chance to watch these elk and watch how they interact. And I'm so adamant about, if you're after a particular bull, you need the deck to be stacked completely in your favor. So you need to control all of the controllable variables and make only efficient stocks. If you know that your percentage is very low at going after this particular bull in the thick timber, back out, wait for him that night. Sit in glass for several evenings and watch where that bull pushes his cows out in a certain spot and pick those ambush spots. I see so many people that get impatient and they just try and just fix bayonets and just charge in there. And that's great if you're just trying to elk hunt and stir it up and just shoot any bull. But when you're really trying to target specific bulls, which is my favorite types of hunts are like
Right.
strategically finding the bull that I want and then trying to figure out that bull and then control all of the controllable variables and make good efficient stocks. Your success rate is going to go up exponentially if you try and kind of take that efficiency approach rather than just charge in there and see what happens. um, and that goes with calling too. Sometimes calling can be super effective, and even people that don't call well can be super effective calling in the right bull. It just happens to be the right time. I think all of us have some success calling, and they're like, "Well, I've got it.
Sure.
I've got it picked. I know what I'm doing," and they almost become overconfident, and it hurts them sometimes. I think. Hunting particular bulls.
Right.
And the other thing I would say is really, Randy Ulmer taught me this a long time ago. I read it in articles, and then I was actually been able to watch him hunt in the field a little bit. Learn the elk that you're after's voice. A lot of times they have a very distinct bugle. There's things that they do, and that's where, you know, the 5 years that I got to spend on the Odd Six Ranch, Hunter Meekum and I, every single day of the rut, we were out targeting and videoing specific bulls. We weren't even hunting really. Most of the time we were just videoing and taking inventory, but it really allowed me to learn the particular bull's um, personality, and they all have different personalities. We would have some bulls that would be all over the 50,000 acre ranch, and they could be in any one corner, any one place. Then we had certain bulls that, they only stayed in a couple different areas. And, if you didn't find them here, you could go find them here. And then there were bulls that the older that they got, the more centralized their core range, so, and then personalities of, regardless of size, but more maturity, like bulls that were like lovers and bulls that were fighters.
Sure.
So my point of all that is to let people know, like, there's a lot of thought process that I think you need to put into it, and understand that every animal that you're chasing has their own personality. And just because one bull that you hunted, was super aggressive and would, fend off other satellite bulls, there may be another bull that you're chasing. His personality is totally different, and he may not want to fight at all. And the second that you challenge him, or another satellite, even if he's dwarfs, if this bull's giant and the little satellite comes in, they just do not, they're not a fighter, and they'll just take their
Right.
cows, or they'll flat leave the meadow. um,
Yeah.
I
And
could
that,
talk all
and,
day about it, but it's like learning personalities that allows you to become more effective and more efficient with your strategy to try and get in close to that bull.
yeah, yeah, and you've had like that unique experience to like get in, you be able to experience the same elk over and over. And a lot of guys I don't think ever see that, Jay. And just in the last like 3 or 4 years, I've had some more of that myself, and I've seen what you're talking about. A
It's made
more
me really appreciate elk, specifically, but I mean, I do the same thing with like coos and big mule deer and stuff. But like elk, once you realize that every one of these animals has their own personality and the way that they might respond to something, that allows you to kind of anticipate where you can find them that afternoon because of what happened in the
sure,
morning, or what you witnessed glassing. And you're like, I know he's going to come out over here because this bull pushed him. He's not a fighter, so he went off over here. Or this bull's super aggressive. He's going to be waiting there right at that opening for anything to jump in that meadow.
yeah,
And so I guess I'm encouraging people, if they have the opportunity to spend a little more time monitoring and kind of witnessing what they're doing, and take note of that, I think they'll enjoy their hunt more, and I think they'll be more effective, especially on their target bulls.
yeah, and you're kind of like it's kind of like getting in their head, like their perspective. I think there is a lot to that, Jay. And I think one more overt thing about it that you didn't say, but I think you were going there, is they sound different. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, you can, I mean, some
Once you
bull. Go ahead.
once you know, they can sound exactly the same, but if you monitor them enough and pay attention to how they're bugling, how they're chuckling, like a lot of times, and Hunter Meekum is really good at this. And Dar Colburn is really good at this. Um, Learning their bugle and learning their mannerisms, and then being able to hear, bulls bugling and go, "Our bull's over there," and you're
Sure.
like, "There's 10 bulls bugling. How do you know?" It's dark, like, because I know his bugle. I know how he chuckles. I know what he does. I know his vocal characteristic, and then you pair that with, his mannerisms. um, when you're chasing elk towards their beds, in say in Arizona country, in the pinyon juniper and the cedars, if you will, and it's thick, and you're just going off of voice recognition, knowing the bull that you're going after is so important, because it allows you to not get slowed down with other satellite bulls. You'd be like,
Yeah.
we need to just go around because our bull is in the back. That's him chuckling. And then a guy you're guiding will be like, that bull right there. No, that's high pitch. Like, just listen for the bull that's just chuckling. That is our
Yeah.
bull. And that allows you to be more efficient. Because when you're really trying to target specific elk, if you're looking at other elk, you're just wasting time.
Right.
So you need to plan your whole hunts off of not wasting time. And then if you're searching for an elk that let's say you're hunting, but you don't even know what you're hunting, but you've got 14 days to hunt. Like, I want a big bull. I've shot a 350 bull. I want something bigger than that. Then it becomes a numbers game. All you're doing is moving in close, elk bugle, look at him. Is he what we want or not? Nope. If he's not, back out, go find another bull. And
Right.
then trying to look at as many, listen, look, and kind of field judge as many elk as you can until you find the one you want. Once you find the one you want, figure out if that's the efficient time to go after them, or if you need to kind of play back and say, let's watch him go into the trees, and let's make a plan for this afternoon, and then sit there and listen for an hour at him bugling in his bed and learn his voice. And that it all ties together. But
Yeah.
trying to be
It's
as
amazing.
efficient with your time as you can is a huge part of being successful.
You know, I want to tell you an anecdote, and I'd love to get your perspective on it because it was an eye opener for me, Jay. Like, I think my years of being in the wilderness and just hunting elk from the perspective of like, let's just find a legal one, shoot it. And that's a lot of people, that's the type of hunts you have, and they're
Absolutely.
and it's fun. But we're talking about a different thing. One and again, it's kind of like your scoring app. Everybody that thinks they're a public land guy, eventually, if you keep hunting, you keep putting in for units, you're going to end up doing what Jay's talking about right now. So it's worth understanding this significant difference. And I noticed that once I got into hunting higher densities of elk, I would fall into this trap, Jay, of like a morning, I'd be guiding a hunter and like bulls are bugling, stuff's vocalizing everywhere. We get down in the mix of them, and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, we're in the thick of all these satellite bulls and bulls that we don't want to kill. But man, this is so much fun. So much
Yeah.
fun. They're coming here. This morning we called in 6 bulls, and we can kind of keep moving with them, and we'll keep getting bulls to come in. Like, this is epic, right? And then I had a moment because on one particular place we would kind of rotate as guides to like go do the perimeter, like just to check the property boundaries or whatever. I had like an epic morning. I probably called in more bulls than I ever had, and everything seemed good. Like, it wasn't like we were blowing up elk and running them all over the
Right.
country. They were just call-ins. Bull would go off, wind us maybe, or whatever. I went on that perimeter line, and right where I had been hunting that morning, the amount of elk tracks coming off of that ranch was like, holy shit. Like, we were having fun, but we changed the whole dynamic because I got into the thick of it and was like having a blast, but not really focused on hunting one elk. And the biggest bulls in that area those could have been their tracks. And they left because of me. I know, because like right where we were, it was just loads of tracks come, jumping the
Yep.
fence line, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, this there's always a cost to like being in there. You know what I mean? You gotta realize that even if you're not observing it, there might be other elk. There's other things like when you're in there disrupting things, like it does change the dynamic. Maybe it sounds obvious to you, but until you do it and see that feedback, you're like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it. Who doesn't like to, call them in and have them come in close and have them breathing and drooling on you and almost stepping on you and raking
Sure.
a tree right next to you. I mean, it's great. It's fun, and it's something that I wish every elk hunter could experience, and that's what we love about elk hunting. Um, I've just and there's days when it's fun to just go do that, but in trying to help people, it's great if you're just trying to kill your first bull. If you're hunting in areas where you're just trying to kill a bull,
Right.
then just dive in the middle and go for it. And that I've done a lot of that. But for me, the older I get, the more I across all, sheep, deer, whatever, elk, I love kind of like isolating and picking a few animals out and trying to learn about them and try and like, you know, just like push myself to learn as much as I can and to be as efficient as I can. And, but a lot of that is the product that, guiding in the best units in Arizona for 20 years. It was phenomenal. Like I
Right.
guided through the heyday of the best elk hunting in Arizona. I mean, every year I would find a 400-inch plus bull. We wouldn't necessarily kill them, but like we were looking at
Sure.
giant elk, and then being able to hunt and work on some of these private ranches and hunt some of these reservations. The older I get, the more that I love kind of targeting specific animals. And, it may be just something, it may not even be the biggest, but it might be, oh, I love that he's got a kicker on one side or he's just a 5 point, but his bases are huge and he's just an old troll. And like, that's the bull. Like, I'd love to get in there and get video of him. Um, but by isolating certain animals, trying to learn their bugle and trying to learn their personality and their behavior patterns, that's the fun part for me.
Yeah, sure.
In our state of Arizona, and back when I was guiding, trail cameras weren't really a thing. Like right towards the end, they kind of became a thing. But you know, one of the frustrating things for me is if I was still guiding on Arizona public land, that frustrates me is part of learning the animal's behavior is running trail cameras and learning everything about them. Learn where they are in the summer, where they are in the rut, where they go in the late hunts. And now without trail cameras, uh, a lot of guys that really focused on that can't do that anymore. Fortunately, where I'm at on some of these private properties in these states, Colorado and Montana, they still allow trail cameras. One of the things that I love running trail cameras on private property is literally getting to know everything that I can about certain animals. And at the '06, it was 5 years. I mean, there were bulls that we had pictures in 17 that maybe we didn't kill till the 21 season, but like Hunter and I would learn every little thing about them throughout their whole year. We knew where they were in the summer. We knew where they were almost every month of the year. And our whitetail friends in the Midwest and in the East, they love trail camming their whitetails,
Right.
whether they have private property or public ground. And I mean, I could totally get into that if it was still legal in our state. And that's part of, just, you know, the older I get, the more I just focus on the process and enjoy the process. And, necessarily don't have the kill, kill, kill mindset, more of like, I'd rather let him live and see what he'll do
Yeah.
next year. And, is he at his maximum potential right now? Is he, 7, 8, 9, 10-year old? Like, what is he? And, you know, uh, there's nothing I like more than having, video and documentation of a bull 3, 4, 5 years and try and learn their personalities. And, they almost become, um, not friends. That sounds kind of goofy, but you almost just get to where you really know them. It's really fun when you get to learn, learn more in and get to a deeper state of like knowing their patterns.
Yeah, and I don't think that's abnormal across like species. It's very interesting, Jay. You know, I'm sure you've run into guys that run duck clubs, and you get to talking to them about like their knowledge of those ducks, like what those ducks do, what'll move those ducks around. Like it's crazy, and it goes across a lot of other species too. I think that one thing that's worth noting, at least that I've observed with elk, unfortunately, elk in a lot of the public land, like a lot of the states, the way they manage elk, um, they're receiving so much relentless pressure on public land. It's hard to do. It's hard to do this, but I think it's a thing. It's a style of hunting that some guys just enjoy because you will see it on a lot of other species on public land, like bear hunters, spring bear hunters, like particularly guys that bait, but even spot and stock guys that are hunting the same area. There's a lot of guys hunting public land that they don't want to just kill a bear. Like they know like big red or like whatever that they've been hunting and they know that he hits the bait only at night or what like this. It's a style of hunting that than a lot of other species. It's real common. Mule deer, same deal. Guys focus in on them. I think that now, I'm not saying that it can't be done with elk, but I think unfortunately the relentless pressure in certain areas it makes it tricky. You know what I mean? But it can be done. Um,
One
it's
of my favorite things, I watch a lot of YouTube, believe it or not, I watch a lot of YouTube whitetail
sure,
videos. I'm not even an Eastern or Midwest. I've shot one whitetail in my life,
yeah, but they're
but
all about this kind of
these
style. Yeah,
guys that
yeah,
that build this story over several years and have chronological, here he is in this camera in this pasture, and then he'll show up over here and over here and over here, and public or private. To me, I'm just enamored with the story of, whatever buck it may be. And he may be like, oh, he's a 4 year old, 5 year old. He's a giant at 6 year old. And now he's a 7 and he's going down. And now they kill him when he's 9 and he's like
right.
regressed. And like, it's not exactly all about antler size for me. It's more like the story behind that particular animal that I love watching it and it captivates me. I mean, there's Bill Winke does an incredible job. Been fortunate to know Bill for a long time. He's kind of one of the OG guys
Yeah,
of whitetail, and
sure.
the Seek One guys, Lee Ellis, just some amazing stories. Some of the Real Tree guys, the the whitetail guys, they they kind of embody what I love doing, and what I was doing, on these private properties, is just trying to learn everything I could about. And so my files are like, here's a 320 bull, and just give him a name because I know he'll be something someday. And then the next year, okay, he's 335, and look, he threw a kicker, and okay, now he's 355, and now he's got double kickers, or
Right.
just the story behind. And my files on my phone, like I think I have 175,000 photos and videos on my phone, and part of that is just keeping folders and files on these animals, and kind of building a story, whether they deserve a story when I first see them. But I tend to know that if I can just chronologically, you know, um, uh, like depict or documentary style their life, like maybe in 5 years this thing's going to turn into just an absolute giant or something unique.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure, man. And so it's like the story, but it's also like during that journey you learn a lot about them. You know what the analogy that I noticed, Jay? Like, just by happenstance, one of them happens to be one of my father's like best childhood buddies. I've tried to get him to go on the podcast, but he's a pretty private guy. And he's run some of the big. He's been a biologist on one of the big reservations, and he raises elk too. He works with a bunch of high fences, and I've sat and talked to him, about like literally raising elk in like not in basically like a feedlot type of scenario.
Hmm.
What he has learned from that as it applies to hunting is like incredible because
Oh yeah.
he has things that he'll say and I'm like, huh, that kind of goes counter to everything in the hunting world, but I know you're right because you've sat there and been like you're intimately familiar with these animals. And what's weird is like I've noticed it on other species too. There are folks that are obsessed with like the exotic animal trade or game breeding or whatever, and they have no interest in hunting. But if you sit and talk to them, you're like, man, this guy knows a shitload about these animals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just because he's just always trying to figure them out and this all that time with them. So it's
You
very
know,
interesting.
last year, I took out a guy on the property that was just there to do a survey, and he's a very renowned wildlife biologist and whatnot. And it was fascinating for a couple hours to talk to him. And we were talking about Mexico and some of the mule deer, and we run cameras down there. We were talking about elk, and he had some history of having some controlled situations where they were monitoring animals, and he'd say, if that buck on a year, if we only put whatever it was, 3 or 5 does in his area, and talking about how his antler characteristics would change the
Huh.
next year if he had an easy rut or if they had 15 or 20 does in that controlled environment where he had to tend all of those does. And
Right.
it blew my mind. It makes sense when you think about it logically, but if you don't have to exert yourself for only 2 or 3 does, or you have 15 or 20, your body is going to be drawn down. And I'm like, I never thought of it like that. And he's
Sure.
like, some of these ranches, whether you're talking mule deer, if you have higher density, sometimes those properties, those animals don't reach a maximum genetic capability because they're running so much during the rut that they run their bodies down. Where if you have a lower density property where they don't have to work as hard, and let's say they have the same genetics, when they don't have to work as hard, their body's going to be in better shape. So the following year, they may sprout a bigger set of antlers. And I mean, my mind was just like
Yeah,
blown
yeah.
because I hadn't really thought of it from that perspective. But then I started looking at some of my ranches for Coos deer in Mexico where super high density, tons of does, tons of bucks. And then some of my other properties that are lower density, but all of a sudden giant bucks, I'm like, the light went off of like,
Yeah. Their life's
maybe
just
there's a
easier.
correlation that lower density means that those bucks are not running as hard and running and chasing and running around as hard. Maybe that's why you get some of those bigger deer. um, so anyway, that was kind of a
Yeah, no, it's super.
I'm,
It's intriguing stuff, and I think that it's kind of cool to get like a little bit out of like the hunter, like the hunter kind of anecdotal evidence that we all have. Because I mean, honestly, dude, even if you're a guide, most of us are still only interacting with elk during a certain time of the year. You know what I mean? And so or whatever species. So it's still like it's interesting to hear other people's perspectives that have that like built up time around the animals. Um, it's awesome
I do
stuff.
the same thing kind of with the fishing. Like, I've gone through stages where I'm just like with fly fishing, like where I want to nymph fish. And, there were times in my life I just wanted to catch every single fish and just catch them, catch them, catch them. And,
Yeah.
and then there's times when, I then graduated, like, I just want to fish with dries or I just want to fish with streamers. And now sometimes it's crazy, but it's like, I just want to know where is the biggest fish in this river or the
Yeah.
biggest fish in this run and what is he doing? And
Sure.
my buddies will be like, dude, they're eating dries like crazy. Let's fish. What are you doing? You're off like pondering life. Well, I'm just trying to figure out like where is that giant brown trout? What is he doing?
Yeah.
And where can I, even if I can just get up on a rock and just watch him, I'm perfectly content with that. So again, I think it's just kind of the older I get, the more goofy I get sometimes. But it's fun to kind of watch these animals, these fish or whatever, and try and figure them out. I'm always trying to figure them out.
Yeah, yeah, no, dude, I love it, dude. I think it's a great because I do so much content, Jay, that's on the other side of this type of hunting. That's just like, if you want to kill one, this is what you got to do. You know what I mean? It's like it's just a different perspective. So I love it, man. But I don't want to take all the time in the world, Jay. So let's get Blake on here and let's talk about your app, dude, because it
I'm
looks
looking forward to showing it to you.
looks
You're
epic.
gonna like
So
it.
let's get into that. Guys, biltong, okay? I have been obsessed with this stuff for 3 or 4 years. Ever since I got on a keto, carnivore, paleo-esque type of diet, I've had a hard time finding healthy snacks. Biltong is a great option, particularly the slabs that have this fat on the side. That's where your energy is if you're a fat burner like me. Super simple ingredients in this, guys. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients. Compare that to your gas station jerky. A great snack in the backcountry or just day to day. Biltong Depot is a huge supporter of my content. Go to their website, biltongdepot.com. Use my code CliffGray, CLIFFGRAY at checkout for 10% off and to support this content. Thanks, guys. I know that you're not the technical guy to show us, so we've got Blake standby to kind of walk us through it. And unfortunately, man, I haven't looked at it yet, but I want the overview of it before I even get into it. So let's just do that. We'll pull in Blake and he can kind of give us the rundown on it, and the audience can check it out. I mean, this whole scoring thing. I mean, I'm a Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young like official scorer, and I still forget all the time. Like I forget which tine is what in the whole thing. So I'm kind of looking forward to just having something that helps me out on all that front, let alone like just getting accurate about it. So let's pull Blake in here.
I know Jay will probably want to chime in before I start running through it, but yeah, that's what you just said is part of the motivation behind the app. We wanted to make this thing to where it's accessible to everybody. So no matter what your skill level is, you're going to find some benefit, whether you've been field judging animals for 30 years or if you're just starting. We've put tools and feature sets in to kind of satisfy all those different people. It's got a field judging component and a harvest score component. So you can go in there and evaluate all the animals you're looking at, that are on the hoof and still alive, as well as we obviously have a harvest scoring component too. That carries over to our educational guides, as well as all the tools and the calculators. So that's exactly right. It's field judging. It has kind of a high barrier to entry. It's hard for guys. There's a lot you have to learn. So we wanted to streamline all that, put it in one place, make this super accessible for, every hunter to be able to get in there and feel like they can accurately field judge. So that's the motivation behind the app. Having said that, it's a lot more than just a tool to field judge and score. The primary thing we're trying to do is build a community. And also we want to build an incredible historical database, which obviously right now the app just came out. We don't really have a lot of data. We haven't acquired it, but give us a year or two of all of our hunters getting on there and putting a bunch of information in. We're also going to have an incredible resource for guys who want to learn and also to kind of just want to go on and see a bunch of really neat animals. So the app goes far beyond just the tools to field judge and score. We really want to hone in on the community, and we wanted to create a place for anybody who's ever had any interest in field judging and scoring, and try and get it all in one platform here. Jay, do you
Hey,
want to add anything before I start showing a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we started on this project about 15 months ago, but prior to that, I've written a bunch of articles on field judging and scoring and aging different animals, aging sheep, scoring sheep, elk, deer, mule deer, coos deer. And, being a professional guide for 30 years, it's something that I've done for a long, long time. And there is a little misconception out there, I think, over the years from writing some of these articles and doing some of the stuff that I've done on Instagram with Guess the Scores. Someone say, oh, Jay's just all into score. I'm really not. But as a guide, I'm into score in that I want to be credible and I want my guides to be credible. And, Cliff, you know how it is when you're guiding a client. You need to be able to tell them, how old a ram is, how big a ram is, how does this ram compare to other rams, or how does this bull compare to other bulls, so that they can make a really good decision on that once in a lifetime tag. So when I was writing all these articles, when apps and stuff started, coming along and technology just kept, it just seems like it's just leaps and bounds and just keeps growing and growing and getting better and better. Uh, the concept of creating an app, we have another partner in this, and he approached me about doing a field judging app. And for me, I basically, Blake and I designed this app exactly how my brain works and calculates and has for the last 25, 30 years scoring these animals. So we wanted to make it available for North American animals. We wanted to make it, a really good app for elk and mule deer and white-tailed deer and coos and sheep and, all the animals that we love. But I wanted something, and this is, Blake has done an amazing job. We've worked hand in hand for the last 15 months every day, put a lot into this, but I wanted this app to basically allow a user to input their calculations and it add the score immediately. So simultaneously, as you're adding, whether it's an eighth or an inch or 22 inches, up in the right hand corner, and Blake will show you in a minute, where it was just constantly adding your gross score. So many times, public land guiding in Arizona for 20 years, I'd be writing on my hand, and then the iPhone would come out, and then I'm trying to type on the iPhone, but never really had a real organized place. And then I added a lot of the numbers in my head or write them on my shoe. We wanted to create a place where people could input the numbers. So you can be looking through your spotting scope and you can be analyzing an elk, and you can just start putting the numbers in, and then you don't even have to hit add. It's already calculated for you. So I think after 15 months, and you'll see when Blake goes through it here, I think we've done a really good job capturing that calculator in that instantaneous feedback with your score that I've been, craving for the last 25, 30 years. The other thing to keep in mind is we wanted everything to be super organized. So, when I was 5 years at the Ot6 Ranch, Hunter and I had, numbers and numbers of bulls that we had to keep track of from year to year to, how are they doing from, 17, 18, 19, 20. And so we wanted to create in this app a categorizing and organizing system where I could keep all of that straight. We also wanted to have the ability to share. So I could share a score by text, by email, and within the app. The beauties of sharing within the app is you can look at the scores, you can look at the media that's attached, and you can do videos and photos. So that's kind of the long and short of it. It's there's no hocus pocus. There's no magic. It's down and dirty field judging techniques and scoring techniques. Like Blake said, we have a field judging, which is for the live animals, and then we have a harvest score, which is for dead animals. And one thing I'll mention too is, Cliff, if you're hunting whitetails in Mississippi, and let's say you're from Mississippi or Alabama, and then you draw a tag in Iowa, those deer from Mississippi to Iowa, talking about whitetail deer, are completely different. Body characteristics, anatomicals are totally different. So if someone's finally drawn this great tag in Ohio or Iowa up in the Midwest, we wanted to create anatomical charts and a place where we could trap anatomical data so that people would realize the body size characteristics and the differences. And we've done that with the app. So we've created a place where not only you can measure the antlers, but we kind of go through a step-by-step of which anatomical measurements we want you to measure. And then this is way more than a field judging app. Like Blake said, we want to trap the data so that after a couple of hunting seasons, this is the resource to be able to, you've got a Nevada elk tag or you've got a Colorado elk tag. What are the differences in those animals?
Right.
You're looking at them, if an elk's 50 pounds more and a bigger head, well, you're going to field judge that differently than if the head was smaller and he was 50 pounds lighter. So
Right. Hey,
Blake, with
Jay, let me stop you right there, man. I'll let you keep going into the depths of it, but I feel like I gotta insert like a thought that's like burning in my mind, and I'm sure a bunch of my viewers are thinking this right now. Like if you look at the content that I do, like the hunting that I do, including a lot of the guiding I do, I'm just finding elk that are in some cases just legal to shoot. In some cases, we're just looking for a nice 6x6 or whatever. So I'm sure people are like, Why has Cliff got Jay on here talking about this scoring stuff? So I want to give my opinion on it because everybody has that kind of mindset, including myself at times. But if you hunt long enough, eventually you're going to draw one of these type of tags that you're talking about, and it's really hard. Like if you have no relative comparison, like there's no disadvantage to having a tool when you go into like a hard to draw unit where you can at least know like, okay, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And man, your body size deal hit me hard because I've guided I don't know, so somewhere in the teens of bighorn hunts, maybe 20 Rocky Mountain bighorn hunts. And when my wife Amy drew her desert tag, I went out and looked at the desert rams, and I'm like, my first reaction was like, these are all big, because I wasn't used to looking at sheep that were like 150 pounds. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was used to rams that were 250 pounds up in the mountain. Like a totally different
Rockies.
deal. Yeah, the Rockies are so much bigger physically. So when I saw a desert ram, I'm like, well, that's a 170-inch ram. It's probably like a 145-inch ram. You know what I mean? Because the body difference. So I guess my spiel on this, and why I do think it's a tool, even if you're not like like always focused on scoring stuff before you shoot it. There will, if you hunt long enough, there'll be a time where you want a tool and you want to just kind of know, like, hey, I got this good tag. Am I shooting one that's like a good one? Because the,
Right.
the reality is, like, I even go in and out of bouts of it. Like, I have to tune myself back up if I know I'm going to be guiding or hunting somewhere where score is relevant. Because if you're not used to doing it, like, a lot of guys are so grossly off. What they call a 310-inch or 350-inch bull is actually a 315-inch bull. Like, that's not like an uncommon, like this the normal elk hunter. Like, that's being that far off is pretty normal for a normal guy. You know what I mean? So, anyways, I just wanted to stop you. I don't know if you have comments on that, but just
Yeah, I mean, we've built this app for all skill levels. There's great parts of the app here for beginners, intermediates, and even the experts, and we think we've covered all of those bases. And when we talk about score, we're not necessarily talking about the highest end of that spectrum. There's a lot of units and states across this country that, or people that are hunting animals, and they're never going to see a Boone and Crockett animal in their unit, but they can compare animals from one to the other and realize that, hey, we're in a mule deer unit, they're 150 to 170 bucks. There's never going to be hardly ever in the history a 190 inch plus or 200-inch deer. But
right.
I kind of want to know what a 150 is or a 170, so that if a really good one comes up on the first day, I know whether I should probably try and harvest them or not harvest them. So Blake has done a really good job trying to kind of rein me in and get back to where we have, all levels here. We have, from beginner, intermediate to expert level within this app. And I think it's going to help people of all skill levels as well.
Yeah, and I think just
Yeah, yeah.
to add on to that, like we have something in our app called Defaults, Cliff, where your calculator will pre-fill with the average values for each like score class of animal. And if you look at elk, it starts all the way down at 250 inches. I mean, for me, field judging, it's not just always about trying to shoot the biggest animal. Some of it is it's really fun and
Yeah,
categorizing and
sure.
looking through animals. And like when I go on a general season Colorado mule deer hunt, I still use this app. Am I going to find something over 170? Probably not. But I still use it like crazy. So part of it is just, the fun of it. That's to answer your question. I think everybody wants to be good at it, whether they say it or not, but it's not, it's just, I think it goes back to that high barrier of entry, right? A lot of guys just don't want to take the time because it takes a lot of experience. So like if you take a guy like Jay who has 30 years of experience, it's really hard to replace that. And I used to, back in the day before I even knew Jay, I used to follow his Instagram and I'd look at his things and he would talk about anatomicals, he would do these guess the scores, but it was really hard, even though that was such great information, to take that and apply it in the field. So we wanted to provide a product where all that was there for you. And we don't care if we want people posting 130-inch mule deer, 110-inch whitetail. Like we care more. We care just as much about small animals as we do big, and we've kind of built our app around that premise. Having said that, if you're just looking for a legal bull, you're probably not going to pull the app out, right? If you're in Colorado
Yeah,
on a
sure.
second OTC and that's your objective, which is totally fine. I was telling Jay, I'm probably going to do that this year. I'm going and I'm just looking for a legal bull to go have fun. And so in that scenario, but I think there's a lot more scenarios versus just your, 20-year to draw type tag or private land. I think there's a lot of circumstances where you're going to leverage this tool. Plus the data, because it all also adds to this database where we can all learn. And we're hoping that in 5 years you can go look through and kind of start to set an expectation. And what Jay and I always talk about is a lot of times when a guy is going on a hunt, he'll call people that have hunted it and say, what should I hold out for? What should I hold out for?
Yeah.
Like, what should I expect? Well, the problem is, like you just said, most people don't even really know what that looks like. And part of that is it's hard to go look through 140 inch or 150 inch, 160 inch mule deer, for example. I'm like, well, what does this look like? So hopefully our app, as we develop, will have that. And then you'll have all the tools to individually break it down and see if what you're looking at meets that, criteria. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that a little bit too, we've got people from all over the country, and they may want to come hunt Eagle County for mule deer in Colorado. And with what we've done on this app is you'll be able to pull up Eagle County and sift through bucks that are from Colorado, from Eagle County, from a specific unit, whether they're big or small. You'll be able to look at the anatomicals, so you can be like, man, I've never been in Eagle County, but I want to know what the ear tip to ear tip is. I want to know
Sure.
different anatomicals. And so people, with all of the different onyxes and go hunts and all of the different websites and whatnot that are giving people data, we wanted to arm people that go into the field, if they're going to hunt in Iowa or Colorado or Utah, to be able to pull up in one place and see a bunch of animals from where they're going to go. Blake, with that said, might as well dive in here and show clip a little bit around the
Yeah,
app.
yeah, yeah, for sure, man. And Blake, I'm gonna interrupt you, dude, because I already got like 1,000 questions as you go through it. So
Shoot.
go for it, dude.
So I'm going to try and be descriptive for the people who aren't watching. But so this is the homepage of the app. You can see up top, I've kind of got a list of recent scores, and then you have your popular horn scores. So this is showing a couple public scores. But to keep it somewhat concise, I'm going to break the app down into a few different categories, and we'll kind of go through those real quick. So we have a guide for every animal, and the guides are separated into two things. You'll see this theme throughout the app. There's going to be a field judging component and a harvest scoring component. So for every animal that we have on the app, you will see an educational guide, whether it's telling you how to field judge or whether it's how to score the animal once you've harvested that animal. So just to give everybody kind of an idea, the ones who are watching, you can see we have all the primary species that guys are targeting: whitetail, mule deer, elk, antelope, coos, blacktail. And then if you go down to the very bottom, you can kind of scroll through. There's animals here that we're still working on. We're still collecting data, like working like Cliff. I was reaching out to you because I know you guide a bunch of aoudad, and we're looking for
Oh,
experts
sure.
in some of these animals and trying to collect more before we put that out there. But even if it says coming soon, there's still things you can access, for these different species. But just kind of diving in one real quick, you can see on whitetail, for example, there's going to be a really detailed guide. Everything on our app is downloadable for offline use. All the videos on the app, all the guides, the calculators themselves are already set up for offline use. So if you want to take any of this out in the field, you can take everything, all the educational material into the field. Like that's a simple one, Cliff, that we always talk about. Like if I go over to harvest scoring, for example, a lot of guys want to score their animal in camp, but they can't remember how to score. They can't remember
Sure.
what all the measurements are. So every species, has a video of how to score it, as well as how to take your measurements. Obviously, the field judging guides are much more in depth because it's a subjective process, right? It's not simply how to lay a tape and measure something, but there's educational information and there's more to come for every species on the app, no matter what it is you're chasing.
Do you have like a way to? Can you actually like if you're judging an animal in camp or whatever? Are the score sheets in there?
So we have a calculator built in. So I'll show you that here in a second. So yeah, there's a place to score your animal um, as well as to record your anatomicals. And we've put cool little features in, like on sheep, for example, in the harvest score, it actually calculates. So as soon as you put your horn lengths in, it'll tell you where to take your quarter mass measurements. You don't have to go look in a
Oh,
book.
okay, sure.
So we've put
Yeah,
like
yeah,
as
sure.
many of those little types of features in to make your life easier, as many of those as we can. But yeah, absolutely, there's a place to score it, share it, etc.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And I don't mean this to like shit on like Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett, but their stuff is like pretty archaic. Like like how they like their online tools.
Yeah.
It's pretty minimal. So I'm looking forward to kind of playing with that on here.
Yeah, I used it all throughout this coup season down in Mexico, and honestly, it's one of the most simplistic things in the app, the harvest calculator. But I loved it just from the simplicity and
Yeah,
trying to
sure.
make the ease of use really, make it really easy. And the video obviously helps a lot too because I think a lot of people want that visual help. So before I dive into the calculators, I'm just going to go over here to the far right on the bottom of the screen, and this is just kind of the basic part of the community. So obviously there's a social component to this app too. You can follow people like you can on Instagram. You can share scores with other users, or you can share scores publicly to all users on the app. But you can go on and kind of find your group and your niche, or when you get on and get real active, guys can follow you and see what you're posting and things of that nature. Outfitters, if they want to get on, you can put your brand in your profile and create your own profile with your website, your email, etc. So guys can go on and follow each other, or obviously create groups with their friends, however they want to do it. And then we'll go into making a score here in just a second, but I just wanted to highlight the scores section of the app. So if I go down to the bottom again, we're going to go to scores. So the first thing that you have, so this is obviously once I've completed all my scores, I'm going to have my list of scores with my labeling system. So you'll kind of see scores that I've been working on here. These are all my local scores, right? The ones that, whether it's a harvest or field judge, and you can see everything's labeled. So it's labeled by its privacy. I have a name if I've assigned one. And this is where I can go look at all my scores. If I want to go back into one and edit it, this is where I can do it. You have filters, so you can one thing like Jay touched on a little bit ago is he might watch the same bull at the Ot6 Ranch for 5 years and want to give it a name and assign it. Well, when you create scores, you can create labels for your scores, which is in apps verbiage for a folder system. So you could have all
Sure.
your scores, and some hunters might do it way more simple than others. A guy who's hunting 5 properties, his labeling system is going to be a lot more complex than a guy who's just calling it, Colorado third season hunt, and puts all of his scores under that label. But you can also, sift through all your scores based on all these different metrics. Going up to the top, this is one of the coolest parts of the app, which is our public scores feature. So
Hey
this
Blake,
is
one sorry for stopping you, dude,
uh-huh.
but on the you alluded to it there, but I know that a lot of guys will ask, like a guy can use the app and store all of his images on there, and he can do nothing public if he wants to. Like it can all be
Absolutely.
just yeah.
Yep. So you have the privacy settings. You'll be real familiar with this, Cliff. When you upload a score to the cloud, you have 3 options, and they're the same 3 options you have when you create a YouTube video. So you have private, which
Okay.
means for my eyes only. You have unlisted, which means that anybody who has a link can view it. So you have to directly share it before it's viewable. And then you have public, which means it's going to show up on our public scores list here. Another thing to point out, just kind of on the privacy thing, I'm sure you're familiar with, iPhone. If people have their location turned on to their iOS data, when they share an image or a video, it shares that location. Well, we built the app where whether your iOS location is on or not, the app never uploads your location, with a photo or video. So we're
I
not.
It
got
was
you.
real, it was real important to us to make sure that uh, anybody that shared anything privately, publicly, that there was no way that anybody could steal that data or location data. So we intentionally made the app where it totally dismantles any sharing locations. So,
Yeah, so
you
any location is user inputted.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I
And
got you. Okay.
yep. Everything is, you have control over what you want to share privately, publicly, because we understand there's a lot of scenarios where guys don't want to share things publicly, especially field judge scores, depending on the circumstances. So yeah, you have full control over that.
Yeah, I got
Um,
you.
and so this is the public scores. Obviously, I won't dive into it too much, but this is like the one that Jay just did, and he posted on Instagram. He also shared it publicly, so you can get on, and this is a field judge score, and I can open up this score, and you can see all the measurements, as well as I can see all of the media. I can see Jay's comments down here, and you can see all the media that a user uploads too. So one of the coolest things about this feature, whether it's a field judge or harvest score, you not only get to see the full breakdown of the score of the animal, but you also get to see all the media they uploaded. So if they have some great digiscope footage or trail camera photos, you can access all this. Like this is the video that Jay used, and I could actually go download this video if I wanted, and I could download this video, create the score, and then I could share it back to Jay. So another way to use the public scores is people can ask for help. They can post one up and say, "What do you guys think this
Oh,
bull
sure.
scores?" And we've made it accessible where the whole community. So that's one of the big benefits to posting publicly with field judge scores is you can get advice from guys who are on here. And this is a field judge score, so Jay wouldn't have any anatomicals. But if I go back to, I'll just give an example here. We'll go to Coos deer. So I'm going to filter the public scores here, and we're going to go to Coos whitetail deer. And then I'm going to filter it a little bit further and do it by harvest scores. So this is just one example of like how you can look through all these different public scores. Maybe you're researching. Obviously, you saw there was a location option there too. But I know Jay, for example, so you can kind of get an idea of what's on here.
But it's also like from the perspective of a guy just wanting to get like reps and try to get like up to speed on it. It's a pretty good resource just to look through like
100.
images and have
That's
scores.
one of the coolest things is being able to go and look through all these different ranges of scores, and really, it's one of the best ways to learn is to see a
Yeah,
Like being able to thumb through the old magazines, Cliff, when
sure.
you'd want to see a hunting magazine and you'd keep a stack that's 10 foot tall and you drew a tag somewhere and you're just looking for mule deer and you're just looking at photos. Well, this, not only you can look at the photos, but you can look at all the data too that comes with it, and all the measurements, the anatomicals, all of that. Sorry, Blake.
Yeah, well, and it's real. It's like realistic too, right? Because I feel like if you want to become really bad at having a perspective, like scroll on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like gives you like it gives you the like it like unteaches you. You know what I mean? Because there's like all the manipulation of the pictures and all these things. But anyways, I just think it's kind of funny. So yeah, it seems like a good tool. It's like I don't know if you guys have ever used it, but my kids use it and I use it like Duolingo. It's
yeah,
like Duolingo for scoring animals. You
yeah,
scroll this stuff and do it, and you get enough reps, you become pretty good at it just by seeing the images.
100%. And so this was just an example of like a buck Jay posted, and you can see it's Mexico, Sonora, and then you can see all the anatomicals. So if you were going down to hunt somewhere in Sonora, you could go sift through Sonora bucks, see who's posted anatomicals, and then you can actually go use these in your own field judge calculator later. So you can leverage all these, and you could do the same thing with elk. You could go look for Montana bulls. Maybe the bodies are a little bigger. Go take those values, and you can create your own custom anatomicals to use in the field judge calculator.
So the
So
anatomicals, those are just the actual measurements. Are they the same measurements that are being used? All the same measurements that are being used for like the official scoring, or is there big differences in there, or is there
what do you
more
mean?
info? So like when you say anatomicals, is it the exact same measurements that are on like a Boone and Crockett score sheet that are used for the score? Does it include outside, inside spread? Does it include everything, or just what's used in the score?
So for the score itself, we did not include measurements that don't count towards gross score. But for the anatomicals, what we're referencing is like the actual anatomical measurements from animals. So like the length of ear, inside of eye to inside of eye, all the
Oh, I'm
anatomicals
sorry.
that you're
Oh,
using.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So that's like next level layer. Okay, so
yeah.
it's not all. I'm sorry.
No, that's
So
okay.
okay, okay. I
So
follow. So you're
we
you're
actually want to gather across this nation the inside of eye, the front of eye to tip of nose, the ear tip, the tip of nose to burr of antler. And every animal, we kind of have a little bit different anatomicals, but we want to build a database so that you can be a whitetail hunter that hunts in every state and know that when you go to Iowa, the difference anatomically than when you're hunting in Louisiana or Florida, so that you can say, oh, the bodies are X amount bigger, the ear tip is different. If you hunt the
yeah,
Arizona
yeah.
strip, the inside spread, the ear tip is huge. When a buck's looking at you, the strip's 27, where most, Colorado and some places are 24, 25. So, 2.5, 3 inches right there just in spread credit.
Yeah, I
Like,
got you. That's useful information because everybody for the last 100 years has been living by the good old boy method of like mule deer, 23 inches out to the end of their ears. That's just how it is. Or what?
Blake,
So yeah,
show the on those photos the comments and the like, and where you can like the photo.
Yeah, so this was one of the bucks that I posted this year, and this was my buddy's buck, and you can see you can share, like someone else could share it. This one says I'm the owner, but you can share scores, you can like scores, people can comment on them. So that's kind of how you would leverage asking people for help. They could put their guess to your score back in the comments if you wanted to.
I got
And
you.
you like said, anytime this is a harvest score, we did a field judge, but you can see you can kind of look through all the different media and all that, whatever the user decides to post. So the public scores feature, and we're going to continue to expand this, add more filters as the data set grows. I'm sure our filters will grow and let people kind of look through it in different ways. And then just we'll keep going here. Up at the top, there's some more settings up here, like you can look at the people you follow, etc. Just more interactive scores, different ways to look at shared scores, anyways. But let's go ahead and dive into kind of the meat and potatoes of the app, which is actually creating your scores, right? So from the bottom of the app, you have this new score button, and once again up at the top. So Cliff, we were talking about a second ago. You have a field judge and you have a harvest score. So let's do a harvest score first, just to make it, to kind of, it's a little bit faster and we can just cover it really quickly. And we'll use a sheep just for the sake of using a sheep, so that we can show a horn length. So we can show how it segments out the horn length for you. So we'll pretend we're doing a Rocky Mountain Bighorn, and then this enter score information page there's a bunch of stuff we have in tutorials, but you can always come back and do this stuff later on the app if you want to. But it gives you the option to, for a harvest score, it gives you the option to put a name in. We'll just give it a test. And then you can also self-report, right? So the reason we put this in is so if your animal has been officially scored, that way you can let people know it's an official score.
Oh, okay.
It's just kind of a self-reporting. So when guys are looking through those scores, they can decipher, if
Sure.
it's a camp score, that give it a few inches, margin on either side.
Sure.
And then you would add, you would add photos and videos to this too. So just, the reason you're doing it on a harvest score is probably just from a sake of sharing. So I could add photos and videos here. So like if I wanted to add, I thought I had one of Jay in here, but we'll just say this was, it's not the guy holding it, but you can add a share page. So that way, when I share this image out, whether it's on the app or to other people, this is where I would add it. There's a bunch of help messages in the app you can close out. So for example, like on this length of horn, let's say we were working with a 36. Oop, I can't do it that way. I gotta, 1 second. Used to doing it on my thingy. Okay, 36, and then we'll say, 37 and an eighth, because obviously that's going to give us a weird number, right? Once I hit save, you can see right next to like the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter mass measurements, it's spit out like where I have to take my measurements. So I don't have to divide. I don't have to deal with dividing the longer horn by 4 to find those anymore.
Sure.
So Cliff, as a guide, I'm sure you've been there in camp where you know that you measure each horn and the circumferences are taken by dividing the longest horn by 4.
Right.
How many times are you trying to figure out when it's 37 and an eighth down to the 32nd where that measurement is? Well, you can't take your mass measurements. So we built this into the calculator so that no one would ever have to guess. All they have to do is measure their horn lengths, and then it will tell you exactly where you need to take each quarter measurement on your harvest score.
Guys, I've been using onX Maps for almost 2 decades now, hunting, guiding, outfitting. It is the gold standard tool when it comes to mapping software in the hunting world. They've been a huge supporter of my content for multiple years, so if you want to support me and you want to support them, use my code CliffG for 20% off at onxmaps.com. It is an awesome tool that I use all the time when I'm preparing for hunts, and I use it almost every single day in the field. For navigation, knowing unit boundaries, knowing private land boundaries, it is the tool you have to have. Which is like, if the guys that are listening to this and they've never done it, it doesn't seem like a big deal.
You can be off by a lot.
Yeah, plus I feel like it's like most people when they do it, they're wrong. They get a mix. Like we're all rusty on fractions, right? So like trying to do the eighths and keep track of everything, like almost nobody gets it correct on like the actual where the quarter measurement should be.
And then you measure a guy's sheep wrong in camp and you're off by 4 inches either way. And if you're low or if you're high and he's telling everyone it's 182-inch ram, and then all of a sudden he gets officially scored and you took the quarter measurements in the wrong spot because you didn't get it exact, and then he gets it officially scored and it's 4 inches smaller, usually that, a guy's told all his buddies it's 182, it turns out to be 177.
Yeah, and I'll comment on that from I haven't been, so nowadays I'm not living in Eagle County in Colorado, but when I was living in Eagle County, I was scoring a lot of deer for Boone and Crockett, as an official measurer. And one thing that was very interesting that I saw is that people who have a score sheet in front of them, and then they look at they look at just the brief summary on the back of the score sheet, how to measure point length, all of those things, how to measure your mass and all of that. They may make small measuring errors, but it's usually pretty de minimis. Like a guy in his garage can get pretty close. Usually the big mistakes are stuff like this. You know what I mean? Like guys would call me and they'd tell me a score before I measured it. If it was a really big deer, I'd have them send me the sheet. Just so I could double check it, just so we weren't like wasting both of our time or whatever. And the big errors, like the 20-point errors on a mule deer, whatever, they were never actually a guy mismeasuring. They were always a guy doing something like adding an extra point, like like so you
Taking
got.
more mash measurements or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like additional mass like on sheep. This was it. Like a lot of times they weren't putting the quarters in at the right level, or they were using the longhorn instead of the short. Like they just weren't following the rules on the score sheet, which is easy to do. But like a classic one was elk, right? Like 380-inch bull. They sent me a picture of it. It's a 350-inch bull max, right? Like I would know, and it's always that they're scoring it like a 7x7 when it's a 6x6. You know what I mean? Because they're scoring the whale tail as an extra point when it's part of the beam. That's not the guy incorrectly scoring it. It's him filling out the score sheet wrong. You know what I mean? And I just note that because a tool like this would help. And I think people actually don't realize like how accurate a layman can be as long as he's got a tool to fill the stuff in. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. And that's why we built, so Blake can click on each one of these and it can show you where you take each measurement. And we tried to go through every use case. Blake would be like, Jay, when you're scoring this, what are the things? Well, when we came to sheep, it was like, oh, I need it to automatically calculate my quarter measurements. But
Sure.
I also, Blake, want people to be able to click on something and see where is a second quarter, where is a third quarter, and see a drawing and they go, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so we tried to build the field judging calculator and the harvest score to basically be foolproof so people didn't make those kind of monumental mistakes.
Yeah,
Right.
and you can obviously always access like the guides. That's why we did for every animal where you can score it. We added a video too, because I know like for me when I was learning how to score new animals, just the text was a headache for me. I always like a
Sure.
video where I can watch and actually like see someone do it. So we filmed a video for each one, and then obviously you have your step by step guide and for each animal. But we don't need to obviously fill out this calculator, but that quarter mass measurement is just like an example. Those fringe cases we tried to think of for to appeal to as many people as possible with all these different tools. But
Blake, share that with me.
okay, well, let me at least put in like some fake ones here. So it looks like an actual score sheet. So we'll just say 13. I'm just putting in some random numbers real quick, just so it looks like something. What do you think, Jay? Say, all right, let's go 12 and a half, and then like 9 or something. And I'm just using, obviously it may not be perfectly symmetrical, but we're just throwing in some numbers here so we have something.
Notice how he's hitting that same LR. You can match it side to side. So if you're field judging and it's 12 inches and you think the other side matches, you can very quickly do the same LR and it matches
Oh, I
both.
got you. That's like left, right. Is that what that
Yeah.
stands for?
Yeah. Well, one more thing here, Cliff. This anatomicals button is if I were to click this is where it would allow me, to measure all my various anatomicals. So there's a picture. So if you want to, like once you've harvested something, if you want to actually go in and record all your own anatomicals, this is where you would do it.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but so once I've finished all that, I'd hit the upload and share button. And then, you have a thumbnail here. This is my share image. If I wanted to move it around or adjust it, this is what's going to pop up, whether I share it to you or if I share it to Jay. And then asking about your privacy, this is where I can set my privacy. So it's once you have to upload your score to the cloud to preserve all this thing, just like any other technology. So you could create, whatever setting you wanted. So if I made this unlisted, it's not going to show up in public scores, but I could share it. And then I also have a location here. So let's say I went to, United States and then I select Colorado. I can select by county or state unit, or I can do both. And I don't know any of the sheep units in Colorado, so I'm just going to pick something random here. Because because I don't know. So
17. That's a good backpack hunt, dude.
I just threw in whatever was
The
random.
ram you put in there, the ram you put in there is a big bastard in that unit. I can tell you that.
And then you can add a caption as well.
Yep. So you can add a caption, and I'll just say check.
Up to 1,100 characters. So the cool thing about that, Cliff, is on both the Field Judge and the Harvest Calculator, you can leave yourself notes. You can talk. You can write the story of how it happened. I mean, it's 1,100 characters, so there's plenty of room to put that
Oh, cool,
information.
man. Dude, I am like selfishly hoping you guys get a ton of traffic on this, because at least on the species where people really shouldn't care, like once in a lifetime tags or whatever, the data is gonna
That's
be
what
epic, man. Because and again, like I always say, like I don't want to shit on people, but I guess I do because I always bring it up. But the state data on measurements, maybe I'm not familiar with Arizona, but a lot of the states I've been in, it just all depends on the person in the office, how accurate they want it to be. You know, you know what I mean? Like,
this is a field judging and scoring, app, but it's data. We
sure.
want the data. We want to help people. We want people to load scores publicly and look at it that they're helping someone down the road. So
Yeah,
whenever
yeah.
they draw a tag in another unit, that everybody has put in the data and that will help them. So as a community, that's what we're really pushing for with this app, is to try and get as much data in this app as we can and build a resource where people can go from different states, different counties, and not feel naked. They can feel like they can go in
Yeah,
there and
sure.
make some good decisions. Blake, go ahead and show the share here.
Yeah. So I just uploaded it to the cloud real quick. So there's effectively 3 different ways to share your score. You can share it within the app. So you can go through and select a user. So I could send this to Jay. And this is, if you know someone who has the app, you can send it to them that way. And I could send another message there if I wanted to. You can also do a text and score web link, which that's for people who don't have the app, but you still want them to be able to see all the media you send. So if I send it that way, it's going to show all the media, all the anatomicals, and the score. And then you also have some options here as you could share it. If you
And
want
that and
to
it sends like an email.
Share it to me, Blake.
it comes through as a text here. So let's see. I'll send this to. Let me go here. Go back. We're going to go to the score. So I'm going to share this to Jay as a text and score web link. And like if I send this to Jay right now, go ahead and show that on your screen, Jay, when it comes through.
It's already here.
So
Ah,
open
okay.
it up
So
and
and
show
that's
what it looks
that.
like.
And if he doesn't have the app, like you can still share it with somebody. Like,
Yep.
hey, okay. That's pretty tricky or pretty cool, I should
So
say.
you can share it, you can share it interactively. So that way, guys, they can still see all the media, all the videos you put in there. They can see the anatomicals. They can see all the things. And then the final option is
But if
we have,
if they want all the rest of the tools, they have to pay you $599 for the app. Okay, sorry, dude.
no, that's just Cliff's price.
That's the Cliff
Oh,
commission.
that's my discount. Every. Oh, that's funny. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. So yeah, so we've created a bunch of different ways to share on the app. You can do social media. You can text to someone who doesn't have the app. Obviously, sharing within the app is going to be the most interactive. But the last thing I want to show is just the field judge calculator, because that's kind of the primary tool on the app. So you do the same thing. We'll use elk, since I think this is an elk podcast. So we'll stay on field judge. We'll go to elk. All this stuff is optional once again. So if you wanted to skip all this and go straight to judging, let's say you're in the field and you want to be fast, you could. I do want to highlight the defaults feature here, because we have this for all of our for field judging for all species.
Cliff, you're going to like this. Pay attention to this one.
What the
All right.
defaults are is it's going to pre-fill your field judge calculator with the average values for an animal of that class. So, for example, you can see we go from a 250-inch 5x5 up to a 400-inch 6x6. For antlered animals, it's all based on typical antler configurations. The big thing what this does is it gives guys, a lot of guys look at it and they have an air judge and say that, that bull looks like it's 350. Well, this is like your acid test. This is your BS test, right? Now, do animals come in all, configurations? Of course. But what it's going to do is give you a baseline of, okay, if it's 350, it should have this. His front should be this long. His third should be this long. His beam should be this long. It gives you a great starting point so you're not working from scratch. It's also a great like shooter pass. If you want to figure out something really quickly, you can work from a point of deduction rather than starting from nothing. So I'll select the 360 and 6x6 default, and we'll hit done. And then there's some more information down here. This is just like labels, location, and then the date. If you want to change the date, maybe you're posting it later. I almost always come and do that stuff after the fact. And then you can either select from, we have some practice videos in here. So these are animals with known scores. So for guys who have never seen elk and they want to practice, just another resource. But we'll go ahead and select from our own. And then you can select single video or multiple video. The only purpose of that is the single allows you to use our in-app trimmer. Whereas if you're adding 3 or 4, so we're going to add, let's say these 2 videos. We're going to hit choose. I should have selected the multiple, but we'll just hit single here again. And we're going to add these 2 videos of this bull. And then I could set a poster frame, which is like my share image, right? So I could adjust this. Obviously, that's a pretty cool one right there. But that's just like if I want to change the share image for later. And then we'll go in and start scoring. Another help message. You can close all these out. So now you can see this calculator has pre-filled with the average values for a 360-inch bull. You can see the total over here. The total's also up here in the top right. And then I can scroll between my 2 media files. So in this case, I uploaded 2 videos. I could do videos and or photos if I had trail camera photos or something. And then, I can play and scrub this video. But let's kind of get into how you're going to leverage this thing.
On your phone, you can pinch and zoom in and zoom out, which I like to do a lot.
I'm on my Mac, so it's a little bit harder. I mean, I can still zoom, but I don't have like as much control as when I use my fingers. But using the Mac, you can still see it. And then you can go, if you really want to be precise, you can go frame by frame, etc. But just kind of diving in, we've talked about already a little bit about the anatomicals. Well, now is when you're actually going to use these, right? So up here in the top, you have this anatomicals tab. So this is going to pull up images and then our average value for all these. So these are just from averages that we've found. Now you can customize all these. So let's say you think the ear tip to ear tip, is really 23 inches where you hunt. You can go hit this pencil icon and you can go to 23 inches and then save. And now you can see your custom value. So you're working off yours. So that's where you'll actually start to leverage.
This is epic, dude. You went Jay Scott dork level on this. I love it.
We geeked out, buddy.
I didn't mean to interrupt, man. Keep going.
No,
man.
that's all right.
This is awesome.
But so this is like the meat of the app. We've put it all in here. You can access the guide for every species from the calculator. So you don't need to leave, you don't need to leave the calculator to learn. If you go down to the bottom of each guide, for each guide, we have a step-by-step process of like, if you've never field judged a bull elk, here's your order. Here's the anatomical, here's the angle you're looking for, etc. So that, and there's a bunch of small features in here. As we start to kind of judge this bull.
So just so I understand, I'm going to look at my anatomicals and say, I'm going to find like on the broadside, look at that bull. I'm going to look at the anatomicals and find like I don't know, what do you got? Like eye to nose or something?
Eye to nose, bird. And let's say you've never field judged a bull, hypothetically, right? Here's what you would do on the app. I would click on this P1. Maybe you don't even know what, and just to clear this up, ours says P1, P2, P3. It's the same, obviously. It references Boone and Crockett, Pope and Young, just our own method. P stands for point. We've tried to create a very intuitive system, especially for field judging. But if I've never field judged something before, I can click this P1, and you're going to see a picture of the P1 with a graphic showing you what it is, where it's measured. And then you're going to see some instructions. So this is like the guide broken down into segments. So right here, you can see it says compare the length of the P1 and P2 to the distance of the antler bird at tip of bull's nose. And then it gives you some more like kind of detailed information about what to look for. So now you could go, okay, well, I'm supposed to look for the antler bird at tips, or the antler bird at the tip of the nose. And I could go up here and see this reference. And obviously, once you've done this a few times, you get into a rhythm. You're not reading the text every time, right? But I could scroll down here and go, okay, tip of nose to burr of antler, typically 16 and a half. I can see the line if I'm not sure what that is. And then, you're looking for your angle or your frame that gives you the best chance. You're probably zooming in and looking. So that's the gist of it. And then as soon as I change something, like let's say I thought these fronts were 16, and let's say I think they're symmetrical, so I'll hit this same LR button. You can see my gross score went up to 362. So the gross score is constantly changing as you adjust values. And when you work off these defaults, especially when you have a pretty typical animal, you can get to a score really, really quickly, a pretty accurate one.
So the other thing, Cliff, too, is we wanted to create the defaults so that people normally kind of have an air judge, or even if they don't have an air judge, they might have, it's a 300-inch bull or a 350. Well, they could start with either one. Then they could take each measurement and go, well, is it longer or shorter than these defaults? So the
Yeah.
defaults give somebody a place to start.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is huge. Yeah, that I mean that makes a lot of sense.
and, and we've done some other things like, so when you're field judging mass on antlered animals, it's the sum of the four measurements. So you're not individually trying to field judge, the four mass measurements. And if you click on this perfect example, like, well, what is the mass on a bull elk, right? That's, people would just be guessing. If you click on this, it's going to give you the average range. So for antlered animals, we use like light, medium, heavy, because, just without diving too much into the weeds on this, mass doesn't make up a huge percentage of score. So you're really just trying to make sure you're in the ballpark. And if you use this range, you're going to be really darn close. As long as you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
visually assign, a spindly bull versus a really heavy bull. So we've put a
Yeah.
bunch of these little feature sets in here to make this as simple as possible. And there's a lot more to it, than we can probably touch on. Like, I can go into this show optional. One thing I should point out, because like if you look at my calculator right now, you can see that it only has 5 typical points and 1 abnormal point. Well, if I hit this show optional button, now I've got, 8 typical points and 5 abnormal points. So it can work for any bull out there.
We
Yeah, I
wanted this
got you. So you got
calculator to expand for non-typical points or extra inline points that were not just a normal 6x6 bull elk.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, and that makes sense. I could see how. I mean, it's a pretty granular tool, but I bet you get pretty darn accurate. One question I have that's not as in depth, but I could see guys using it a lot is like a couple guys are looking at a bull and they say, okay, that's a 325-inch bull. Can I pull up the app and just look at a bunch of pictures of 325-inch bulls?
By looking at the public scores is going to be your best recourse to
That's
do
it. So
that.
you just
Yeah.
but once you got the data in there, a guy can. I know this is outside of this because it's obviously a very granular tool, but I can just filter by that score and then be like,
So
these are all bulls in that category.
the gross score filter is not in there yet, and the only reason it's not is because we're waiting for more volume, right? So we're
Oh,
waiting.
okay,
As
yeah,
soon
yeah,
as we have more
yeah,
volume of animals, then absolutely we're going to create to where you can filter by gross score.
yeah. And
And
I know that's I.
we think that will be one of the most valuable tools because there's tons of guys, they just want to see a range of 320 to 330. Show me as many as you can, or
Yeah,
a
just
170
it's
mule
like
deer to a
a
180.
Yeah, it's like a calibration. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think, and what made me think about it is like this, like a baseline. What is the average 350-inch bull score on all these measurements? It's a like once you can calibrate your mind to it. You know what I mean? At least that's how I feel about it. And if you don't have a way to do that, you can be so grossly far off. It's kind of wild. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
So
that's definitely
yeah,
one
no,
of the best
that will
ways
be
to start
useful.
learning. So yeah, that'll absolutely. Well, like I said earlier, like the public scores, the filters will continue to grow as the inventory of scores grows.
Sure.
But that'll be one of the best ways people will be able to use it. And then the sharing process is the exact same. So you pick your privacy setting, and you have the same exact sharing options. But within the field judge calculator, the only other thing I'll point out right now is that you can create your own custom default. So this is really cool for sheep. Like if let's say the historical basis of the rams where you're hunting, you could come in here, create a score, and create a custom default based on those bases in the unit that you're hunting. And then you could name it whatever you want. So I think I used 17 for Colorado. Let's say you used unit 17, you could create a default with just the mass measurements for the sheep in unit 17. So that way, every time you started a new score, let's say you were guiding in there, every time you started a new score, you could start off that default. So you can really
Yeah.
customize these defaults, to whatever it is you need them to do.
Yeah.
Jay, did
Which
I
which
did I miss
it's
anything?
amazing.
No, I mean, just so Cliff knows, like we have defaults in there for every animal. So we have them for whitetail, for coos deer, for blacktail, for mule deer. All of the different animals have the defaults so that people can leverage those defaults. And that goes, when we were talking earlier, from experts to beginners to intermediates. One of the nice things, by creating the defaults, it gives guys a place to start. And once they have a place to start, then they can go point by point or measurement by measurement and just try and determine, is it less or more than the default?
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of times you might start with a 320 inch default to only come to find out that the bull, every measurement is bigger and he's a 342 inch bull. But by putting in the defaults, it allows people to go point by point and have a starting point and be in the ballpark. And maybe they realize they're way high or they're way low or they're right on. But the reality is, rather than starting from zero, that's why we created those defaults, to give people a place to start.
Yeah, which makes sense because if I understand it correctly, like I could pull up I think it's a 370-inch bull, and then I could put in, I see the beam measurement. I could put in my beam measurement off the picture, and I could be like, well, I might as well go back and choose a different default because he's actually probably like, I'm not even close. He's 340 or whatever, and then I could jump to that default and then like get more granular, right?
Right. I mean, we wanted to simplify it for guys, but then we also made it complex because people can create their own defaults. And where that comes in play really is like in sheep, where, you know,
Yeah,
Cliff, you came and hunted with me in unit 22, and very rarely is a ram space under 15, and very rarely is it over 16 and a half. And, you know, I got to where, you know, I knew my 180 to 184 inch rams had 16 and a quarter inch bases. And then I can build a default for, you know, my 170 rams, my 175 rams, and my 180 rams. And now I've got my unit 22 in Arizona. If you're looking right here, he's going through the defaults. So you've
yeah.
got your 14 inch bases, your lengths, and we created all of these defaults. So get guys in the ballpark. And I think people are really going to like these defaults once they really dive into them.
Yeah, and I could, I mean, it's amazing how on certain species how different it. Like even in Colorado, I'm sure Arizona has the same thing. I think it just has to do with like the original transplants. I mean, one mountain range, you'll never see a ram over 14 and three quarters, and then another mountain range like 15 and a half, 16-inch bases is normal. You know, but
And
like the difference is gigantic, like in the
And to
total
take
score.
that a step further, what we're going to lean on is our community to build these custom defaults for a mountain range in Colorado that you just said never has over 14 and 7.5 on the bases, to another mountain range that is always over 15 and a quarter.
Yeah,
Well, we will get experts that are using this app that are sharing their defaults and say, listen, if you ever draw a tag in XY range, use these 5 defaults and you'll pretty much nail your mass, you know. And as we gather data over hunting seasons, we'll be able to, Blake and I will be able to go in and actually extrapolate the data and build custom data sets per mountain range, for bases and first quarters, second quarters, and third quarters. And that's where we can really start making some headway on, you know, helping people, you know, leverage this app to make good decisions based on where they hunt and what tags they draw and whatnot.
yeah, I love it, man. Um, I guess the last question I have, guys, is like, when's it coming out? What like where can guys get it? Like, what's just the logistics on that front?
So it's available for Apple now. You can go on, you just go on the Apple App Store, type in HornScore. You get it. Everybody gets a 2-week free trial. So everybody can sign up for the 2-week free trial, really give it a thorough run through. What we always recommend people do is take an old animal or use a practice video, kind of get comfortable with the tool, see how it all works. But yeah, you can absolutely get it on Apple App Store right now. Once the 2-week free trial is up, the price is $49.99 a year, which breaks down to like $4 a month. So for less than your Starbucks coffee, you know, you can have this app. And then Android is a little bit behind. It's lagging. It's a little bit more complex. We're hoping within the next week or two to kind of have Android up to par. So it hopefully shouldn't be too much longer on that front.
Good stuff. Sweet. Well, dude, I appreciate the overview on it. I'm intrigued, big time. You know what I mean? And I think the original point from the get go is like, even if you're not obsessed with scoring, it's a good thing to know, and it's good to have a tool. Everybody who's not obsessed with scoring, if you hunt enough, you'll eventually get like a golden opportunity to use this, even if it's not the world you hunt in, or that's like your normal style. Um, if if you're in an area that's got big ones, why not try to shoot a big one?
Well, and I think with the public scores feature, I mean, it gives you the ability to funnel through and look at a bunch of different animals. The other thing that we're proud of and that, we're excited about, how there can be some banning and shadow ban and that type of thing if you have blood on photos
Oh,
or if you
sure.
have that type of stuff. This is an app built, by hunters for hunters. We're not afraid of blood. Obviously, we want to be respectful with our photos, but we really want to build a community and have a place where people can share photos. And all hunters understand that every once in a while you're going to have a tongue out or you're going to have a
Yeah, sure.
some blood in a photo, and so by having it in this app, we're not subject to some of the things that you are on social media. So, we really wanted to create a place for hunters to come hang out and, build a community around it for sure.
This is just a random question, but if and you may not have it built in there now, but do you have any future thoughts on like will it does it have to be harvest shots and all scoring stuff, or is there room for other sorts of content? Like and the only reason I thought about it, Jay, is like if I post how to cape a bull on Instagram, boom, my account gets shadow banned immediately. Like I lose all distribution. You know what I mean? Do you guys ever think that you'll allow that kind of content on there?
I mean, that's actually a great point. I saw Blake kind of smile when you said that. I think that's a great point and a great idea. And I think that just goes to show, as we've been building this app and as we've run this app through testers, Blake and I every day work on this, and we think we come up with every little thing about the app. And then we talk to you and you say, hey, is there a place where if we wanted to post how-to videos on caping or,
Sure.
how to cut a leg off or anything that hunters have to do every day, that's a, that's a great, that's a great idea. And it gives us, dealing with guys like yourself and getting input. This is exactly the type of community that we want to build, where guys have come up with some great ideas that we've implemented in the app. And yes, you technically could post videos on the app, right, Blake?
Yeah, so there's a whole content side of the app built in, ready to go. So like these are just general videos, for example. But under each species, like I've actually had a conversation with our other partner about this, and that was one of the things I wanted to add is how to cape, how to quarter, all the different things, and add those videos in because it kind of goes in line with harvest scoring. So under each guide, whether it's field judge or harvest, so we kind of dictate where it goes. There's going to be a section for additional articles and videos right up here. And obviously, as
Oh,
the app
cool.
grows and the content grows, we already have the database built so that, yeah, we can add. And obviously, well, I'm sure we'll come up with new ideas for content and stuff like that. But there will be a bunch more content getting added constantly. Right now, I'm adding just a bunch of general content just to kind of get people comfortable on the app, how to use anatomical stuff like that. But yeah, we
Right.
will have a lot more species specific. And I definitely want to add some, caping, quartering, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, and that stuff's all good. I just brought it up because it's for sure. I get messages about it all the time. Like in terms of like long form content on YouTube, there's lots of good resources because they'll demonetize that type of content, but they don't. It doesn't like affect your overall account. So I think people don't realize like platforms like Instagram and even like TikTok and all this short form stuff, it's not there. It's not that people are not trying to provide it. It's that it literally it shuts accounts off. I don't post any of it anymore. You know what I mean? Which I have tons of it. And you can't find it. So if somebody wants that kind of stuff, they have to go to some sort of distribution like this. So yeah, I was just curious more than anything.
That's a great idea, actually.
But anyways, guys, I really appreciate both your guys' time. Jay, you wanna give the listeners like where they can catch up with you, where your hunts are, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, the best way is J Scott Outdoors on Instagram. You can also go to my website, jscottoutdoors.com. Have the podcast. Cliff has been on the podcast. Cliff used to guest host the podcast and did a really good job. I get people asking all the time, have Cliff back on. I'm like, Cliff has his own show now.
No, I
um,
loved it, man.
Yeah, we had a
So
lot of fun. 10 years of doing the podcast, almost 900 episodes. It's a great resource. I've had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, if you want to reach out, Blake and I can be reached at HornScore on Instagram. It's at HornScore Official. And my email is always the same, jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Cliff, I appreciate you having us on. This has been field judging articles. I've been writing them for 25 plus years. I've got to give a lot of credit to Blake. Blake is, the younger generation. He's still in his 20s, and every day he pushes me. He's pulling information out of my brain that, things that I haven't thought of in years. But, yes, I would say I had a huge hand in building this app. But, the guy right here on the screen, Blake, without him, there was no way we would able to get all of these ideas into this app and have it come to fruition. He does a phenomenal job. He's got a lot of passion for it. I mean, he'll call me at 5 in the morning or 11:30 at night with an idea. And the whole goal of this is to try and help hunters. With my podcast for 10 years, it is a free platform. All it was is just to try and give information to people and help them make good decisions with this app. All we're trying to do is help people become better, make better decisions in the field, and we're looking forward to kind of building this HornScore community. So appreciate you letting us come on your platform. Just been super proud of the work that you've done, and the traction that you've got. I remember when you started, and now 150,000 subscribers or something on YouTube. Doesn't surprise me one bit how genuine you are, the transparency you have talking about gear and hunts and all of that. So kudos to you for the success that you've had with your platforms. And it's inspiring to come on Instagram or YouTube and see a great video from you, very informational, sometimes fun, some comedy in there. I mean, you've just done a great job. So I appreciate, it's great to have, someone as real as you, with the experience and the background of all the hunts and the guiding that you've done. But a lot of people don't know. And I always, bring it up on my podcast. You're educated from Stanford, very, very well educated, very educated in finances in the business world. So, anytime Blake and I can share a platform with you like this, we're just honored to be here as guests. So thank you for having us on.
yeah, of course, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for all the help over the years too, Jay. Like, you really have been a huge help to me, man. So thanks a lot, guys. If you enjoyed this content, do me a huge favor. Subscribe on whatever platform you consume it on. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever works for you guys. Everything else is on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. Go there and it's going to be very apparent to you that I work my ass off just to not have a real job. All the hunts I guide, all the seminars I put on, all the unique experiences I offer, and the membership site, all the details are there.